Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of 5 Facts. Today we're going to be talking about the 1990 cult classic Nightbreed. This is a movie from Clive Barker, written and directed by him, and an adaptation of his novella of the name Cabal, which is also what this movie was originally called, but the studios wanted to make it a little more marketable with the name Nightbreed. Nightbreed starts out as a film about a therapist who is actually a serial killer, using one of his patients and gaslighting him into thinking that he actually is committing the murders that the psychologist is doing. The psychologist is played by the great David Cronenberg of The Fly fame. He's a great director, and he is absolutely insidious in this movie. His performance is awesome. The person he's trying to frame for these murders is Aaron Boone. Through a long, twisting series of events, Boone finds himself in the hands of the Nightbreed, a group of monsters living under a cemetery in a city called Midian. At this point, he is bitten and murdered by the police, but because he was bitten by the Nightbreed before that could happen, he is turned into one of them. The interesting thing about the Nightbreed is that they're not really the monsters we're led to believe they are. They definitely look evil. They look like the traditional evil type of monsters. There's a lot of grotesque things going on. But in the end, they are just trying to survive in a world that's been hunting them for ages. After going into Midian and finding the god Baphomet in its lower chambers, Boone is able to see that he's part of a prophecy in which he's supposed to deliver the Nightbreed onto a new home. At this point, the movie really kicks off, and you've got a really just fascinating fight between militiamen and all the things that go bump in the night. It ends up being a really fun climax. It's a lot of explosions, a lot of just crazy different things happening, and it's a lot of fun. Anyway, enough with the synopsis. Here are the facts. Fact number 1. Philip K. Decker's knife was a Victorian-era amputation blade. The knife Decker uses is actually a Victorian-era blade called a Liston knife. This was named after Dr. Robert Liston, who ended up creating this knife. He was known as the fastest surgeon in the West End. He was a Scottish surgeon who could apparently do an amputation of somebody's leg in less than 2.5 minutes. Part of the problem with that is that he got a little overzealous sometimes. There were recordings where he actually cut the fingers off of his assistants, and both the assistant and the patient ended up dying of gangrene later. Fortunately, he was one of the first doctors in the UK to actually use ether, so even though a lot of those amputations happened without ether, he at least got that going for him in the end. The knife has also gained prominence as being the main weapon in From Hell, the Jack the Ripper story with Johnny Depp and Heather Graham. This is the knife that Jack the Ripper actually uses on his victims. Fact number 2. The city of Midian is actually a biblical reference. Midian was located in the northwest portion of the Arabian Peninsula. It is the place where Moses supposedly spent 40 years in isolation for the killing of an Egyptian, and it's also where he supposedly saw the burning bush. In Nightbreed, Midian is a place for the tribes of the moon to be in exile, where they can kind of just rally themselves and worship in peace. When Boone comes to Midian, it's revealed that he is part of a greater prophecy, that he is to destroy Midian and basically bring the Nightbreed out of hiding and into a new world. Unfortunately, we never get to see their new home, because this was originally sketched out to be a trilogy, so it left a lot of hanging ends whenever it only became this one movie. Fact number 3. The studio had no idea what to do with this movie. Nightbreed is considered a horror fantasy epic. It kind of left Fox not knowing exactly what they had on their hands, especially because not a lot of movies had actually come out like this before. It was a movie where the monsters were the good guys and the humans were the bad guys, and they didn't know how to get that across in trailers, they didn't know how to promote it, and they didn't even necessarily agree with the way the movie turned out. There were many times in the editing process where Barker had control taken away from him. It was originally over 2 hours long, and they forced him to actually cut a full hour from the movie, bringing it down to about 102 minutes. On top of this, the MPAA rejected the trailer 12 times, often citing too much violence, too many monsters, and so many other things that were just kind of essential to telling what the film was about. This ended up causing problems because the only way they were able to market the film was as a generic slasher. In theaters, this movie never lived up to its potential because it was so gutted by the studio. For a long time, horror fans found themselves finding the Cabal cut, which was a VHS tape that had an extra 20 to 40 minutes of footage depending on which edit they got. This allowed fans to see a little bit better version of what Barker intended the movie to be. Thankfully, in 2014, this movie was released fully 4K on Blu-ray, remastered, in its entirety, and it was able to be overseen by Barker, so he was able to finally create the movie that he wanted. Fact number 4. Hellraiser and Nightbreed exist in the same universe. Clive Barker's more well known for his Hellraiser series, which last I checked was at the 7th movie and possibly a reboot coming. It's a series that's been notorious with horror fans for ages. It came out in 1987. Epic Comics published a crossover series between the two franchises. Because of the nature of these monsters, the Cenobites and the Nightbreed did not get along well at all. The people of Nightbreed are good-natured. They can be very dangerous, and they are savage whenever they have to be, but that's not in their nature. Whereas the Cenobites are completely, just absolute sadists. There are more connections here as well. Doug Bradley, who plays Pinhead in the Hellraiser series, actually plays a character in Nightbreed. Nicholas Vince, who played the Chattering Cenobite in Hellraiser, actually also plays a character in this and ended up being one of the writers on the comic. Fact number 5. Makeup for Clive Barker movies takes forever. Craig Schaefer, the actor behind Aaron Boone, said that anytime he had to make a transition into his Nightbreed face, which is mostly just swirls and various other things, he's not near as made up as some of the other people in Nightbreed. It would take at minimum 6 hours. A car would pick him up at 2:30 in the morning, and he would get on set at 9 and go work for about 12 hours with all this makeup on. He said it was one of the most arduous experiences of his life as an actor. What's crazy is his prosthetics were not even half of what some of the other people had to go through. You had full body prosthetics. You had so many different monsters that just had so many individual cool things about them. Some looked like harpies, some looked like demons. Some were really odd kind of monstrosities, and there's no other way to describe it. And all of these people had to spend a long time getting their makeup done. This is also one of the biggest strong points of the movie. Practical effects almost always hold up better than CGI effects, especially from the early 90s. So you get to see a lot of amazing creature effects. Clive Barker said he was hoping to get that feel that Star Wars gave in New Hope, where you walk into a cantina and it just feels like it's alien, it's new, it's all sorts of things you've never seen before. And when they're walking around the town of Midian, you really see that. It's a huge, sprawling set, and you get to see so many different monsters, even some that you only see for a few seconds, and it really helps build an interesting world. Nightbreed is interesting because it's another commercial flop that ended up being a cult hit. It cost $11 million to make and only made about $8.5 million of it back. It's a film that reflects Clive Barker's kind of cynical view of humanity, that the people on the edges and periphery of humanity are often subjugated, ignored, and just completely subjugated. Along with that, he's also attacking the hyper-conservative style of horror that's out there. Most horror films, especially from the 80s, have it so that people who are doing anything sort of sinful or sexual are getting punished. And in Nightbreed, that doesn't end up being the case. Most horror films that reach this level of prestige and cult status end up having more to say about a subject than they're originally letting on. If you look at The Exorcist, it's not just about demons going into somebody. It's about femininity, it's about puberty, it's about basically how society handles a young girl turning into a woman. Anytime you can put deeper meaning into a movie like this, discerning horror fans are going to find a reason to like it. Now, don't get me wrong, Nightbreed isn't without its faults. It definitely has some issues with just being a little bit too 80s. Lots of one-liners that could have been cut out. Lots of cheese that's in there. A little bit predictable as far as the love interest and the things that are going to happen with that. Sometimes it's also hard to figure out character motivations. Despite all this, it still has heart, it still has amazingly fun violence, and awesome creature effects. It really is worth a watch. Be sure if you're going to watch it, though, that you check out the director's cut. If you watch the director's cut, you get the movie that Clive Barker intended. It has a different ending, has so many more scenes setting up people, and it just makes a lot more sense. You get so much more flavor and depth added to this world. I can't stress enough how important it is to actually get the right director's cut for this. Anyway, that does it for 5 Facts this week. Thank you all for watching, for listening, for dropping those comments. There were some really nice ones on my Martyrs review last time. I really appreciate that. It's good to know where a series is going. If you have any feedback, drop them in the comments below. Also, let me know what you thought of Nightbreed, or if you have any other interesting facts that didn't make it into this episode. If you enjoyed this review, be sure to check out the Human Echoes podcast. You can find it on any podcasting platform, iTunes, Google, Stitcher, all of them. Just look for the Human Echoes podcast. You'll get long, in-depth reviews from Albert Berg and I, and it's a great product, and we are really proud of what we've been able to produce over the past few years. So be sure to check that out. Have a great week.